Hey, I'm Thomas. I'm a full stack engineer in the remote development team at GitLab, and I want to quickly show you what I've been working on over the last few days. I was trying to figure out business rules around provisioning agents and also describe how are we planning on choosing, like when you are creating a workspace, how can users pick agent to use to provision their workspace in some Kubernetes cluster. And so, like the main two problems that we are trying to solve are when a user creates a workspace on a screen similar to this, what should we show in that select cluster agent field? Like where are the agents coming from? How do you configure them? So that was one part of the problem. The other one is when admin is deciding like where to create an agent, how to assign it with a group or a project, how to make sure that we are not offering wrong agents, how would that work? So currently the way how we are modeling this in Rails is that you have kind of like infrastructure project. The project is meant to contain all your configuration, like Kubernetes resource definitions and the agent configuration, and it's more meant to be one repository that is reflecting the state of your infrastructure. And that's not the way that we will want like the agents to work. You will of course have the infrastructure project that sets up the agent, but then also there is going to be plenty of non-infrastructure projects that would like to create workspaces using that agent. And so that's the main problem that I was thinking about. So there is existing in this regard of how it's modeled at the moment, there is existing GraphQL endpoint where you can get agents either for a group or for a project. And I was describing how this behavior works and try to figure out, is there any initial version that we could use for that? And I think there is. I think we will have a shortcut to use before we implement the full ideal scenario. So pretty much if you are asking for this group and you have a developer or higher permissions for that group, you will see all the agents that are under the group. It's because the permissions bubble down all the way. Like as far as I'm aware, you can't, if you have this infrastructure project, you can't, if the group that this project belongs to has you already as a developer, it's no way to in the infrastructure project say, I don't want to like inherit the permissions from the group. And so at least I wasn't able to find it. And so in my testing, this was the behavior. As long as you have developer access to the group, you will see the agents. So that was important. If there is a hierarchy of group and subgroup, and you are only member of the subgroup, you will see all the agents within that subgroup, not in the group. But if you are a member of the group one, you will see what's in the subgroup and any other agents in the whole hierarchy under group one. The visibility of the infrastructure doesn't play a role because like even if the project is private, all the group members still see it. So that's not a problem. The only problem is that like everybody who wants to create a workspace or like see the agent will need to be able to see the configuration. They don't have to be maintainers in the project, they can be developers, but they will need to have access to that infrastructure project and see the agent configuration. And yes, so there is a possibility to have a GraphQL query where you, instead of saying for a group, you want agents for the project. But as I explained here, currently that would only really be possible for an infrastructure project, and so it would be useful only if you want to create a workspace with the code from infrastructure project, and that doesn't really sound like what we need, so it's a side note, we don't need it. Here I explained the requirements, so this is kind of summing it up. You have multiple groups and subgroups, all want to use one particular agent from the infrastructure project. The spike behavior, and this is the interesting part where we will see that we probably can achieve most of what we want at the moment with what's already there. User has to be developer member of a group. It's not possible to just have a member of a project, specific project, and not the whole group. So that would be one limitation. Like you can't just say user A is a member of project A, and so they can, like a developer in a project A, and so they can create workspaces there. The user would have to be a developer of the whole group. That might be an issue, but I don't think it's an issue in the initial release. The infrastructure project has to be part of the group. Makes sense. So like if this was gitlab.com, like if this infrastructure project is set in GitLab org, the gitlab.com, like gitlab-com group wouldn't see that project. As I said, it's impossible to define project specific. It's always by the group. And there is no screen. This is the big limitation. There is no screen that would show overview of group agents. Like if you see here, this is an overview of group runners in like CI runners. And we don't have any screen like that. We have only that GraphQL endpoint. And so that's, I think, a big limitation, like something that we probably would have to still implement even in the initial release. Now, the ideal behavior that's open for discussion, I'm not sure what's the ideal behavior, but my guess would be that we would want to have same scopes as the CI/CD. So you would have instance agents for maybe when we have agents or a Kubernetes cluster for workspaces available on gitlab.com. You would want to have instance runners, something like we have now shared runners. Group, you would have definitely a different way to set up agents for a group and specific agents for a project. And also for a project here, you can now say, I don't want to use shared project and I want to disable group, I don't want to use the shared runners or group runners, which is pretty important if you have very specific, like a runner that you need to set up for a project. And it might be also a requirement for the workspaces when you have very specific cluster for a particular project, not for the whole group. And this is something that I was thinking about. I'm not sure whether that's the best way to do it, but we could introduce another concept of like having the infrastructure agent. That's how it is at the moment. It's the moment you set up agent for the infrastructure project, you have this infrastructure agent, and then we would be able to promote this infrastructure agent into a workspace agent. And these workspace agents would be like a subset of the infrastructure agents, and those would be meant to work as CI runners, work for CI pipelines, but for workspaces. So the infrastructure runners would stay as they are, and then you would have the infrastructure agents would stay as they are, and you would have the workspace agents that you could then assign to instance, group, or project. And I already talked about the disabling of the runners or agents for group and like the shared runners from the instance. So there is some questions for the configuration we need to figure out. We will meet up with them and ask what's the reason for having multiple agents in the same cluster, and is it okay to reuse the infrastructure agent that we talked about here the whole time? Is it okay if we use it in this manner in our spike? Is that something that is acceptable, at least at the beginning? And then would we like to have some more information about the agents that, like when we are showing this dropdown that I was showing here, like would we like to have some label there saying like this agent is connected to cluster that's at 90% capacity, don't create more workspaces there. Here you can read about, I pretty much summed it up, but I also described how CI runners work, and I really think that we should follow those rules eventually in the ideal scenario. And that's it. That's all I wanted to show you in this session. Let me know in the comments. I'll